This video was brought to you by Incogni. Due to an odd twist of politics, China controls most of the water in Asia, with water originating in the height of the Tibetan plateau, spilling into most of the region's major river systems, and providing water to more than 20 downstream countries. This essentially means that China's neighbours depend partially on the goodwill of the CCP for a reliable freshwater supply. Fortunately for everyone involved, for most of modern history, relations between China and its downstream neighbours have been pretty cordial, and a patchwork arrangement of bi- and multilateral agreements have been enough to diffuse the occasional disagreement. However, as demand has grown and China's relations with some of its neighbours have become more strained, water has suddenly become a point of contention, especially between China and India. So in this video, we're going to explain why China controls Asia's water, why it's becoming an issue, and what might happen next. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So, to understand this story, you need to know a bit about Asia's geography, especially that of Tibet. If you take a look at this topological map of Asia, it becomes immediately obvious that there's one very high bit bang in the middle, which is the Tibetan Plateau, home to the Himalayas. The Himalayas are sometimes described as the world's third pole, because they hold the largest concentration of ice and glaciers outside of the northern and southern poles. And as such, the vast majority of Asia's large river systems basically originate in Tibet, which was annexed by China in 1951, and then flowed downstream into the rest of Asia. In fact, China's own two major rivers, the Yellow River and the Yangtze, both begin in Tibet and flow east towards the Yellow Sea and East China Sea, respectively. It's not just that either. The Mekong River, which is the main source of water for Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and Vietnam, begins in Tibet too, before flowing through China's Yunnan province and down towards the South China Sea. Then the Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra, the largest rivers in Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh respectively, all begin in western Tibet. All in all, there are at least 19 international rivers flowing into as many as 20 different countries that originate in China. This makes China sort of a hydrological hegemon and gives Beijing an immense amount of leverage over its downstream neighbours. Fortunately enough, for most of modern history, water-related tensions in Asia have been kept to a minimum, both because, well, there was enough water to go round, and because a whole load of diplomatic forums developed to help affected countries communicate with one another. In 2002, for instance, after a dam along the Tibetan part of the Brahmaputra caused a devastating flood in India, China began sharing its hydrological data with both India and Bangladesh, and created a bilateral forum for water-related discussions. When it comes to the Mekong, while China has refused to become a fully signed-up member of the UN's Mekong River Commission, it still participates in summits as a so-called dialogue partner. And this has apparently been enough to keep relations with other Mekong states relatively cordial. China has created the Lancang-Mekong Cooperation in 2015, another body that helps to govern the shared use of the Mekong, and now includes Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Thailand. While the LMC has been criticized as a Chinese-led alternative to the MRC, intended to reduce American and UN influence in the region, it's nonetheless been relatively effective as a diplomatic forum. However, in the past few years or so, tensions have begun to escalate for at least three reasons. Firstly, China's hyperactive dam building. And that's because China has built some 23,000 dams since the 1950s, far more than any other country, and today boasts more medium-sized dams than the rest of the world combined. Many of these have been built in Tibet and Yunnan, especially after China's Go West program began in the 2000s, which was specifically about upgrading infrastructure in Tibet and other Western provinces. On the Mekong alone, China has completed at least 11 dams, with more in the pipeline, and China's Belt and Road Initiative has funded another 11 dams in Laos and Cambodia. Now, China claims that these dams are necessary for both moderating downstream flows and generating renewable energy for its enormous population, but they're nonetheless contentious with China's downstream neighbours. The second issue is climate change. Climate change has meant less predictable river flows, and as such, droughts and floods are common and often are succeeded by a blame game between China and its downstream neighbours. In 2013, for instance, Thailand blamed Chinese dams for flash floods in northern Thailand and Laos. And in 2020, India accused China of blocking a tributary of the Indus River in the disputed territory of Aksai Chin after the river's flow fell to a record low following the monsoon season. Thirdly, the brewing geopolitical tensions between China and some of its neighbours, most notably India, have unsurprisingly exacerbated anxieties about China's control over Asia's water supply. Relations haven't been helped by the fact that during a border spat between China and India in the summer of 2017, Indian officials reported that China temporarily stopped reporting hydrological data, presumably in an attempt to exert leverage over New Delhi. And the most recent point of tensions concerns a new so-called super dam currently being built on the Brahmaputra. The dam was announced by the CCP in 2021 as part of their 14th five-year plan. And while specifics are hard to come by, the CCP originally claimed that it will be able to produce as much as 300 billion kilowatt hours of clean renewable energy annually, about enough to power the entirety of the UK. However, Indian officials have also been worried about China's South-North Water Diversion Project, an ongoing project to divert water towards the drier regions of northern China, although Chinese officials have insisted that it would not affect the Brahmaputra. Now, it's important not to overstate all of this, because while tensions are higher than they once were, they've been well managed so far, and the prospect of an actual conflict over water looks very unlikely, at least in the near future. Nonetheless, the direction of travel is worrying. Water-related tensions are only expected to grow in the coming years, thanks to an unfortunate combination of climate change, growing populations, and ever-increasing industrial demand. And if these trends are accompanied by a continued deterioration of Sino-Indian relations, then the odds of water-related conflict in Asia will become non-trivial. Not least because, as neither India nor China are signatories to the UN's Watercourses Convention, there's no international forum to resolve water-related issues. And the temporary suspension of data sharing back in 2017 demonstrates that the current set of patchwork agreements rely on a degree of goodwill that might not last forever. While you've been watching this video, you might not have realized that shady forces in the background are trying to collect your personal data from various sites, bundle it together, and sell it to a third party. These data brokers can then sell your information to anyone, from a company to an online criminal. Now, you might assume that you're always safe online. Perhaps you regularly change your password, or even unsubscribe from those annoying email newsletters that you never even remember signing up for. But unfortunately, this doesn't always save you. Companies that hold your data can still fall victim to a data breach, meaning that these data brokers can still compile all of your information and sell it on to others. The good news is that you have a right to protect your privacy and request that data brokers delete your personal information. But the bad news is that it would take you years to do it manually. And even then, you'd need to repeat this process every few months as data brokers continue collecting your data. Luckily though, this is where our sponsor Incogni comes in. Incogni reaches out to those data brokers on your behalf, requests that your data is removed, and deals with any problems that might arise. Even more, Incogni is persistent and will put in multiple data removal requests even after your data has been removed to ensure that it doesn't go back on the market. So create an account with our link in the description, grant Incogni the ability to work on your behalf, and sit back as they make you safer. Plus, if you use our link, you'll get an exclusive 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Thanks for checking it out, and thanks to Incogni for sponsoring this video.